Thank you very much. Right, and now I would like to introduce a couple of people who have been living with viral hepatitis to share their experience. So first, Jazzy, would you like to?
Hi, my name's Jazzy De Lisser, and I was diagnosed with hepatitis C at the age of 2. At the time, I had a very bloated stomach and was sick, and my mother said she had a motherly instinct and knew something was wrong. We were living in Jamaica at the time, and so we flew back to London, and I started undergoing lots of tests. And that's when they realized I had hepatitis C. And it was through my diagnosis that my mother realized she had the disease and I had contracted it at birth. We then went back to Jamaica, and every 6 months I would have my liver function test done. And at the time, no one really knew much about hepatitis C. And my grandmother, for example, wouldn't let me share food with anyone, as she said that I could pass on the disease. Some of my friends' parents didn't want their children hanging around with me, as they thought I could pass on the disease. Being a child and having something like that is so hard to even begin to understand. By the time I was 6, my liver function test had deteriorated so much that the doctor said I had to do treatment, or by the time I was 15, I would have severe liver damage, and by the time I was 20, I'd have liver failure. So I started the treatment at 6, and it consisted of just interferon, and it was an injection 3 times a week. The nurse used to come round to my house, and I remember begging my mum, please, not the injection today. And I remember getting on the floor and saying, I wish I was a dog, or I wish I was a mole and I could bury a hole and hide under the ground. I continued doing the treatment for 2 months, and after 2 months, my white blood cells had gone so low that the treatment had to be terminated. After that, we all just tried to pretend that it wasn't there, and that just tried to not acknowledge the fact that I had hepatitis C. And it wasn't until I was around 14 and I was at school, and it was in a sex education class, that hep C got brought up, and they started comparing it to other sexually transmitted diseases. I just remember sitting there and my heart sinking and panicking. I then called up my mother and was like, we need to do something about it. I need to get rid of this disease. I can't continue my life with it. And we went to the hospital, and they did a biopsy, and my fibrosis had developed. It was halfway to cirrhosis. So they said that I had to try the treatment again. So I tried interferon and ribavirin, and I started it at the age of 16. And I remember the first day doing the injection and just crying and crying, and it wasn't long before the side effects started. There were a lot of flu-like symptoms, and just exhausted. I was exhausted constantly. I don't really know how I managed to get through my exams or those 2 years of school. I had genotype 1A, so the treatment had to be a year, and it was a combination of interferon and ribavirin. And after 5 months, I had my first set of tests, and the virus had gone. And I was like, oh my God, that's it, it's over. And then because my side effects had been so severe, they decided to lower the dose I was getting. And then at my second set of tests at 7 months, the virus had come back. I was completely devastated. And then, in order to give me a chance of beating the disease, they decided that it would be a good idea to extend the treatment and to up my dose again. And at this point, my body seemed to shut down. I became incredibly puffy. I lost the majority of my hair. It was covered in eczema. My mouth was filled with ulcers. But I kept going, and I was determined that I was going to beat it. And then, at 15 months, I had my final set of results, and it had failed. And I was completely devastated. And I'd gone into it really believing that that was it, that I was going to beat it. But it wasn't until afterwards I realized how much the treatment had affected me. I didn't get my period back for another 3 years after treatment. I was constantly exhausted, and I was ill all the time. But as it hadn't worked, and it was a disease that has such stigma around it, it's incredibly hard to be a 17-year-old girl with no one to talk to about it, and no one my age who would understand. And trying to start a relationship and trying to discuss, I had hepatitis C. I didn't even know where to go. I wanted to run away from the whole thing. And so that's what I did for the next 7 years. They said that I'd have to wait anyways to do a new treatment because my body had been so depleted by the interferon. And it wasn't until last year when I heard about Harvoni, which was a combination of 2 drugs, and it was a new treatment that only consisted of 3 months. And I started that in September last year. And sorry, I'm getting really emotional. It's just been such a long journey, and then this new drug arrived, and it was only 3 months, and it was 1 pill a day with practically no side effects. I remember the day I started the treatment and just looking down at this 1 pill in my hand, and I couldn't believe that that was it. This 1 pill was going to cure this disease after everything I'd gone through. And I did the treatment, and after a month, the virus had gone. But I had to complete the course. And then after 3 months, after the treatment had finished, I then had to wait another 3 months to get my final results. And after the 3 months, I got my results, and the virus was still negative. And even saying that now, I still can't believe it. I have to pinch myself regularly by the fact that it's gone. This drug is completely amazing. If there was anything I could take back, it would be not doing the interferon, as no one deserves to go through that. And the long-term side effects that it had on my life really impacted my life so far. I hope that gave you some understanding of what it's like to suffer from hepatitis C. And thank you, Charles, for having me today.